lost the little foxes. They're feasting on our vine.
And here we are.
Here we are, episode 2 of the
Marriage Alpha Podcast.
My name is Michael, and this is my lovely wife,
Shana.
Shana. Let's go the last name there. Can't do that. That's the problem.
What?
I almost said our last name.
Why can't you say our last name?
I can. Michael Williams. I am Michael Williams. That is most definitely Shana Williams, and we are so glad that you were here to listen to our second episode. Funny story.
Mm.
We had the episode.
Yeah.
And the Apple gods decided that they wanted to eat that. So now we are switching to all Microsoft stuff.
No, we're not.
Yes, we
Actually,
are.
I think that was the third time. This is the third time we're recording this episode. So apparently it's
Yeah.
not what God wanted. So
Apparently not. But you know what? We're doing better now.
not doing video.
We're not
just
doing video. We're trying to
audio.
get away from video.
Yeah, we may come back to that later once we figure out what the heck we're doing. But
Well, our internet service out here in the boondocks is not the greatest. So we had to figure out a way to get that a little bit boosted up before we try to do video, because it would take it like, what, all night long to upload
Yeah.
one video?
Mm.
Yeah, it's just not cool in this world.
anyway, I'm sure
Anyway.
nobody cares about any of that.
Nobody
So
cares.
we get down to business.
Okay.
Episode 2. Episode 1, we talked about the story really more from your viewpoint.
Yeah, really more from my viewpoint about what I was going through, how everything affected me, my
Yeah.
mental health and well-being, and that I was way down the road. I was not
Yes.
walking with the Lord at all.
Yeah.
So, but on this episode, we are going to talk about how it affected you,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
your reaction, maybe a little bit of the consequences of the act that I did.
Mm.
Or is that later?
How I survived it.
How she survived. I know that it was difficult while I was at the hospital taking a mental break. You were here dealing with the after. So, and I want you guys to know, just because I make light of it now doesn't mean that I don't take it seriously. Throughout all this, we have both taken each other very seriously throughout all of this, and forgive my humor. I do tend to let that show off.
Well, we decided to call this one Blindsided by Betrayal, and then a tagline on that is Finding God in the Ruins.
Right.
Because that's definitely what happened. I was blindsided by the whole thing, but then also, actually, I would say God found me in the ruins
Yeah.
of it and carried me through it. But
Yeah.
I'll let you shoot the questions at me. Maybe
Okay.
that's the best way.
Okay. So I guess the first thing that I want to know is that what were you doing? Where were you at whenever? How were we doing as a couple?
Yeah.
In your mind, how were we doing as a couple when all of this came about?
I thought we were doing okay considering that what we were going through. We were going through so much. I think we talked about that last time. Just the weight and the stress of our finances were so hard. And then we sold our house and moved. So there was the stress of moving cities, moving 45 minutes from where we had lived before, trying to figure out what in the heck we're supposed to be doing. Why are we moving, God? We just felt like we were supposed to. And it just didn't really make sense. But at the same time, I felt like we both felt like this is what we were supposed to do. So I thought, when you take all that into consideration, I thought we were doing okay. I knew that you were super stressed. I could tell. You were very just weird acting. I mean, just super anxious all the time. Just to the point where like even right now, like it's hard for you to be still.
Yeah.
You could not be still. And
It was worse back then.
oh yeah, and if I tried to talk to you, you would constantly interrupt. I think we got in a couple of fights because I'd be like, "Would you please just stop interrupting me?" And I didn't know that was like part of
Yeah.
the PTSD response.
Right.
The fight, you were in fight or flight,
Constant.
and I just didn't realize that that's what was going on. And you were having these literally anxiety attacks, panic attacks happening every morning. You were waking up and you were like, "I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm having an anxiety attack." And so I would just be like praying with you, because at that point we had started the praying together,
Yeah,
which I
we had
hope that
staked
we
the
talked about
property
that
and
last time.
everything.
I
I
think
think we
we
talked
did.
about
Yeah.
that. I
So we
think
had
we did.
started that maybe like in July, and this was I want to say this started happening. Well, the whole thing fell apart September
Yeah.
20th is when I found out. It was on your birthday when I found out. So that week had started with, and I think we talked about this last time. I had gotten some weird Facebook messages, and then I started getting phone calls,
Yeah.
and I'm just like dismissing them because I'm thinking there's no way, right?
Well, and I had told you there was no way
Right. You made
as
up the
well.
elaborate story about, um,
Oh God, which
y-
one?
I don't know. I'm talking about like why this woman was coming after you at work, and
Yeah, I know.
you made up the story about it,
It's
and I
not
believed
something that
you.
I'm proud of. Today.
Yeah, for
Any of
sure.
it, any of it, especially that
Well, I,
was
I just believed you because you had not given me any indication ever
right,
that that you were that kind of person or that you were living a
right.
double life. I think though we see what we want to see in somebody.
Well, we'd only been married for 2 years,
Yeah, we
and we were still in that.
3.
Yeah, 3 years. I guess we were still kind of in the honeymoon phase.
Yeah,
We were still in that new marriage stage where everything is great, everything is fine, everybody's happy. But when we first got married, all we did was we went straight to work. When
right,
we took a couple of
right.
days off at the house, and then I traveled. You hit the ground running with your new business, and everything just kind of took off. And then the next year we moved here,
Yeah.
and
The third
and
year, year 3 is when we moved in here, and that's
yeah,
when I started really feeling like, okay, something is not quite right, but
right,
I just thought, well, we're just stressed. We're just tired. And he's working
right.
a lot about.
I was,
He and you hated your job and you talked about
I
it all
did,
the time. So I thought, okay, he hates his job. And we were already talking about getting you out of that profession. You were sick of it. We were already
right,
making plans. I just didn't realize how much you hated that job and how much it was really feeding into, I think, the problems you were having, the addiction you were having.
right,
Not only did it provide a place to do it, it also was that you hated the job so much that you had to, I think, like find ways to
right,
not think about how much you hated being there.
right.
It was like I need some excitement because I hate this.
Okay, so we move in September the 20th. Um, was my birthday, obviously, my birthday.
Where was this is a Christian podcast?
Right?
Wrong podcast.
But we had you had bought tickets to a play
Yeah, we were gonna go to
for
the
us
play.
that day,
Mm-hmm.
and we went. We got dressed early. And we're like, hey, let's go by Dairy Queen
Mm-hmm.
and let's get some ice cream. And we went and got the ice cream. Well, we didn't get that.
We did get the ice cream, but we didn't. I didn't
Yeah,
eat
we
it.
didn't eat it. Neither one of us did. So we got a phone call while we were waiting in line. It was from someone who I had been having an emotional affair with. And you want to start
Well,
there?
yeah. I mean, I went immediately into I think freeze. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because really, when you go to that, it's fight, flight, or freeze. And for me, it was freeze because I couldn't. It's like I couldn't accept it. It's like I couldn't. It was just too much.
Right.
I would rather just like not believe that it was true or not real. And so it took me a while to even accept that it happened or that it was true because it just was so unbelievably shocking.
Right.
And the betrayal was just not anything I was expecting.
Right.
And not to mention I had been through it before, and
Yeah.
so that made it even triply awful. That's
Yeah.
not even really a word. Whatever. It was. It was like the whole world. It was just like I would. People say the rugs pulled out from under your feet. This like the whole world was pulled out from underneath me,
Right.
and I
Right.
did not know what was real, and I did not know what was true, and I didn't know who I was married to.
Right. So we come back home, and obviously we did a lot of intense talk arguing about everything. And then I was sleeping on the couch, and you had been receiving text messages as far as communication go. Was that night?
Well, no. So what happened was this particular woman sent me screenshots of the
Yes,
text.
screenshots.
And so
Yes.
because it happened so quickly, I wasn't able to piece it together while we were in the truck, and when we got home we fought. It's
Right.
like I had to like go back and reread everything because I was like, what just happened? And so I'm piecing it together and I'm realizing what had happened. And then that's when I came and woke you up and we fought some
Right.
more. I mean, we just kept fighting all night.
Yeah, it was long. And the next morning, we didn't get much sleep that day or that night or the night after. Um, but I had gotten up and I had been. I think I told you that I had to go by the yard.
Yeah, which we told that last time.
Yeah.
All of that.
Um, and then that's when the you want to lead up from there. What were you going through at that time, and what were your
I got to be
emotions?
honest. So when I got off the phone with the guy who confirmed what you had been doing which we don't even know how much of that is true because we just don't. Yeah. So anyway, got off the phone with him. I called you immediately and I said, I know everything. And
Yes. Okay. I thought about. Yeah.
you said, okay, I'll come get my stuff. And I said, where are you going to go? And you said, I'm going to move in with my mom. I said, oh, really? Your mom? And you're like, yeah. And
Yeah.
you said, I still have one more um, card to play. And I said, what? But I knew what you meant. Got it. And that's right after that is when you turned off your location under. So, but at first, I was pissed. At first, I was like, okay, go get your stuff. I can get out. I don't give a crap.
Yeah. I
I
remember
mean,
you
that's
telling me.
where I
Yeah,
was
we
at.
didn't
I
have
was like,
divorce.
okay, bye.
Yeah.
Um,
And it was deserved.
but then I started feeling, I started feeling panicky and scared because I thought, okay, this has escalated beyond um, whatever had happened. I knew at that point that you were contemplating suicide. So I had to like get out of my flesh and be like, okay, Lord, show me what I need to do. And that's when
Right.
I got, the police involved and my mom, I had to get someone else involved. I got my mom involved and we found you and all that. But as it was going down and we're at the graveyard with you, I am, I am literally in intercession, but I feel numb. It's like I would love to tell people that, hey, I felt God. He was so right there with me, but I
Not at
didn't.
that time.
I was terrified because all I could think about was, oh my God, if he kills himself, I got to live with that the rest of my life because I contributed to it because I made you feel worse because of the way I was talking to you. Which
Well, I think you get some grace there, Shay, because at that time it's kind of hard to be merciful to someone who just hurt you. You're a human being, and you're going through those emotions that, oh
right,
my God, this guy that I thought the rest of my life with
right.
is a jerk, and he's a cheater, and he's a coward. So, I mean, you get some grace
But I
there.
think it was more than that because I didn't even know who you were. I was
Yeah.
kind of like, okay, whoever I thought I was married to is not who I'm married to. But I
Well,
was,
there were a lot of things I never told you about myself
yeah, and I
until
didn't
after.
know that PTSD was triggering all this. So in my mind, I'm so confused. I mean,
Right.
confusion, just being overwhelmed, not being just, I don't know if anybody can relate to something of that level of catastrophe in your life, but you don't know what the heck is going on.
No.
And I couldn't even think straight. I mean, I would forget to eat. I wouldn't go all day and not drink water. This went on for weeks where I wasn't sleeping. It was horrible.
Yeah.
It's the worst sick feeling I've ever had in my life in the pit of your stomach where you feel like you're so nauseous and you feel like somebody stabbed you. Um,
Right.
and you don't know what to do. I hate it. Oh God, I don't ever want to feel that way.
Right.
So that was that day,
It was the
and
21st
yeah,
or the
and as
20th.
as my mom's with me, and she's not saying anything negative. She's just trying to be there for me. She's not running you down or anything like that. We're just praying at this point. We're interceding. We're begging God to spare your life. And we had tried to talk you down, but you wouldn't. You just backed the truck up and left, and I couldn't chase you because the cops got there. Because I would have kept chasing you and talking to you. I think I probably could have talked, but um, everybody's like, that's so dangerous, but I knew that you wouldn't hurt me. I knew that, I knew that you wouldn't shoot me with the, so,
Yeah, I've done
um,
that.
anyway, that day was the worst day of my life, of your life. What you, what you remember of it, anyways, I remember a lot more than you do, probably.
Yeah, I blacked out after I hung up the phone with then when I got to the graveyard, it just comes in kind of flashes,
Yeah.
you know. Um, yeah, it was just
And you tried to tell me. So I talked to you multiple times on the phone while you had the gun in the truck and the cops are surrounding the car and they're texting me and they're telling me to stop talking to you. To stop. I said, I'm not calling him. He's calling me. And I'm going to answer the phone if he calls me.
yeah.
But you cannot make me not do that. Because I knew if I didn't answer it, that would actually make it worse.
Well, and I don't understand what their meaning was behind you making it worse.
Right.
I don't understand what that was.
Well, so the one of the times that you talked to me, this is where I started, I think, to have a heart change and to start to understand what just happened. You said to me, um, you started talking about how you had this need for adrenaline and that all of this was about adrenaline and you never cared about any of these women you were talking to, that they never mattered to you. And even a minute ago you said it was an emotional affair, which really isn't probably the right word, because that would imply that you actually cared about these
Yeah, that's
people.
true.
It
But
was more just like a,
it's
yeah, you were getting adrenaline, and I don't think people can understand that, because they're automatically going to think, oh well, you must have had feelings. No, you didn't. You
no.
literally, it was like a drug to you.
For a veteran who has post-traumatic stress disorder, it's not about feeling. It's about getting the adrenaline
Right.
dump that you live with for months at a time while I was overseas, you know.
Yeah.
So it wasn't about an emotional attachment at all. It wasn't about
That's what
physical.
confused me, because
Well,
when you
y'all
were
think
here,
emotionally, yeah.
with me, you seemed happy with me. You seemed in love with me. And so that's where the confusion for me was. I don't understand, because you seemed like you wanted to be with me. You were in
And
love with me.
I did, but things had just got so out of control around that time.
Yeah.
It was just, it had snowballed up to a size that it was just not maintainable. And I had been trying to get myself out.
Right.
You know,
And you had been bargaining with God, and God's like, nope,
I do it,
tell
rip
the
the band-aid
truth.
off,
And you
buddy.
didn't.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so the graveyard, I give my, unload my revolver, I rack the round out of
Hmm.
the slide, and I give my gun to a police officer. They put me in handcuffs, and then I guess all y'all came and saw me.
Yeah, me and my mom
Yeah,
and Allie was, uh, and we just told you we loved you. We hugged you. You were cuffed.
right.
You were completely out of it. I've never seen anybody like that. I mean, it was a complete snap.
Yeah,
Uh,
had a mental breakdown. Um, so tell me what you were going through and what your emotions were. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to keep it together because this is a hard thing to talk about. Knowing that I put my family through this, that I put you through this is that's hard. So just bear with me here. Um, okay, so the police officers tell you that they're going to take you to the hospital for evaluation.
right.
I
And they
get
told me I couldn't come up there. There was no point. So
right.
I came home and I was just kind of sitting here with my mom and Allie, my daughter, and um, then all of a sudden I get a text from, I think Maria is her name,
Yeah,
right?
Maria.
And she was like, "Hey, where are you?" I'm like, "Well, you guys told me I wasn't going to be able to see him, because
Right.
you're saying I make it worse, but you were asking for me."
Yeah.
And so I went up there and I'm thinking to myself, what in the heck am I going to say? How am I? Because I can't act.
Right.
Like, how I am. I'm very like, what you see is what you get with me. I'm not an actress. So I thought
Right.
he's going to know that I am overwhelmed. I'm ticked. I'm hurt. I'm confused. And before I went in, Biz came out,
Yeah.
the police officer, but officer that, oh, he wasn't a police officer. He
He's
was
ex
just a,
special operations.
yes, he's basically the guy that talked
Yeah.
you down and saved your life. God, through
Right.
him, saved your life. And
Yeah.
he said, I just want to talk to you for a second before you go back there. I want to see where you are, because we don't want to send you back there if you're sick. And at
Right.
first, when he first started talking to me, I was like, you know what, da 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 da. And the longer I talked to him and Maria, they kind of just I softened up and I started getting more, I don't know, just um,
Well, you spoke to
understanding.
someone who had been through it
Yes, and he
because he had
said to
been through the
me,
same
because
thing.
this is one of the other things I remember that changed everything for me. He said to me, I know it's not fair what he did to you. He said, but it's not fair what happened to us when we were in combat.
Right.
And I thought, okay, now I'm starting to piece it together that what's happened is a byproduct of, yes, you had a decision, okay, but I truly believe that if you had not had PTSD to the level you had, and it had, it hadn't been treated, you didn't know how to deal with it, I do not think you would have done it. These things that you had been doing, I don't.
Well, it's my fault that we got to that point because I'd always thought that I just had it under control,
Right.
But before you and I met, I was single. And when I'd have a moment, I just go away for a weekend somewhere, or
Yeah.
I would drink a lot of alcohol or something like that. So, I mean, I self-medicated to a certain way, you know, but then when I quit drinking alcohol,
Which you did
which I
before
did
we.
before any of this happened, months before any of this happened.
Well, you weren't drinking that much anyway. I
No,
mean,
I
it's not
wasn't.
like
No, I
you drank a
wasn't.
glass of wine here or there, but it wasn't
Right.
like anything
But
major.
I didn't have anything to kind of keep
Yeah.
those memories down because most of my drinking that I would do was at night, right before I went to bed, because God, I hated going to sleep
Right.
because the dreams and the flashbacks were so horrible.
And also, I will say you weren't on any kind of
I was on
antidepressants
nothing.
or anxiety medication.
Right.
You were totally against it. Being a nurse, you were like, I don't want any of that crap. I don't believe in it.
Right.
Um, but they gave you a ton of stuff when you
They gave me a
got
lot of meds.
out.
They knocked me out for a few
But you had to, and
days.
they told me, they
Yeah.
said it's a process for him to come down off of this. It's going to take him a while.
Yeah.
As far as like I'm talking about like the snap. When you snap, you're way up here, and it takes time for you to come down.
Right.
So
I know they were watching me like a hawk that when
yeah,
I first got there, because they put me on a really good ward. I mean, they put me on a good unit. They didn't put me on the where I probably should have gone was the worst, the psychiatric. If I was as good as everybody says I was, I probably should have been there.
yeah.
But through the Lord's intervention, they put me on a really mellow unit.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was. I think that was the best place because it was mellow. All the patients were very, very friendly. Um, they were sick. I'm thinking, what in the world am I doing here?
Yeah.
And
And I couldn't get to you, and I couldn't talk to you, and
right.
all I could do was just wait for you to call me and just sit by my phone,
Okay,
24 hours a day.
so tell me what's going through your mind. I went in the hospital on a Saturday.
You went
I went
in
on
on a
Sunday.
Sunday, yeah. So yeah,
What's going through your mind between Sunday and Thursday?
so
What
the
was happening?
suicide attempt was Saturday, um, uh, early afternoon.
Right.
And then you got put in the hospital. They kept you overnight. And then the next day they called me and said, hey, here's what we're going to do. Or I think you called me. And I had already seen you like 2 or 3 times. I came up there and saw you and talked to you. And of course, you were still very just way up here,
Yeah, I was
you
not.
know, with your anxiety. You were completely unhinged. I mean, not in
Right.
like I thought you were going to hurt me way, but I could just tell you were not thinking
I
straight.
wasn't me.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
But every time I would talk to you, when I would get away from you and come home, I would just be tore up. I would be scared. I would be thinking, "Oh my God, what am I going to do? Who is this person?" Um, I didn't even know which person I was married to. Was I married to the one who loved me and like who you were around me? Was that who you really were, or were you really the other person? I mean, it was literally like two different people, right?
Yeah, I was
And
too.
but every time I would come see you, I would have peace again. I
Mm.
would talk to you and I would feel good. But every time I got away from you, I would start just ah, And
Right.
and so anyway, they take you and you're like 4 hours away from me and I can't talk to you. And so literally all I could do besides work, which was another terrible situation, I had,
Yeah.
decided
To
like
leave the
to
group
leave
you were with.
the job I was at, and I started a brand new job that week because the Lord said do it now. And I said, right now? Like, can I maybe wait until, and he's like, no. you do it right now because the pay was going to be double
Yeah.
where I was, and I knew that I was going to need it because at this point now I'm worried about, oh my God, what are we going to do about our finances? Um, I'm
Yeah.
already in a commission job that is feast or famine, and
Right.
you had the only stable income in our home, so I'm thinking, so I have that weight on me as well,
Right.
and it's like I was floating around. I don't even know how to describe it. When you go through something traumatic, it's like you're not in your body, you know.
Right.
But and I've told this story, and I know you've heard it, but I have to tell it because it
Right.
to me, I think it helps people understand,
Right.
um, how they can get through something like this. But you were gone. I think this was probably Monday,
Right.
maybe Tuesday, and I'm just trying to survive. I got the new job going. I have to go through all this stupid training, and I'm like losing my mind, and I'm having to do training. But was listening to this book, and it was an audio book, and it was about a woman who had gone through something like this, and she talks about how she got through it, and she's just giving you like advice. And she said, she was going to a counselor. The counselor said, you need to just do some deep breathing. She's like, are you kidding me? Deep breathing is supposed to fix my problem. And because it's super hard to be still and breathe for 20 minutes. So she
Right.
said that's what she did. She did this for weeks where she would set her timer, and at first, when she first started doing it, it felt so ridiculous and she could hardly be still. But as she kept doing it, it was bringing her down out of this
Fight or flight mode.
out of flight mode. And
Yeah.
and and because what was going on is I couldn't hear God. And I had to hear him because I didn't know what in the heck to do.
Okay, so tell me about your friends at this time because you've got a really good core
Yeah.
group of friends who are basically sisters to you.
Right, right. So I have a couple of really good friends and of course I have my family as well. But in these kind of situations, you hate to drag your family into it all the time because
Right.
they're gonna have a hard time forgiving if I
Yeah.
decide to stay with you.
Right.
They have to work through it too, and so a lot of times, and they're so protective of you. So I wanted to go outside of my family. I wanted to go outside of my family so that I could. Sorry, I'm gonna have to edit this out. I wanted to go outside of my family and talk to my friends a little bit so I could get a perspective that was not so protective of me so that I could really hear kind of like, what is the Lord saying? How does he feel about this? Because I needed to know what he wanted me to do. And the thing is, God is not going to force you to do anything you don't want to do. He's a God of free will. And I had to get quiet enough to hear what his thoughts were. Like, what is he, like, he knew this was going to happen, right? So what was he planning? I mean, and then I'm just trying to work through like, why would you let me marry this into this situation if you knew this was going to happen? Blah blah blah. All that stuff is going through my mind. So anyway, I just did what the woman said. I set the clock, my timer for 20 minutes. I was sitting outside, and I just started breathing,
Well,
and it
I
was so
think that
hard.
yeah, I think that deep breathing, meditating, as new age as it sounds, I think even the prophet
Oh,
meditated.
it's all through the Bible, yeah.
Yeah, it's all through the Bible. So get that out of your head that meditating is a horrible thing. It's not.
Right. And
Um, but I think that this is new. It kind of centers you in the presence of the Lord.
mhm.
And when you meditate on God, that means your mind is completely black. There's no intrusive thoughts coming in, no husband in a hospital. It's just you and the Lord. And I think that's when you can most hear God.
Right.
And and what were your friends and what were God telling
Well, my friends, they were being very supportive and hey, pray, hey, seek the Lord, don't make any decisions right now. God, but they would also say things like, hey, God can God can turn anything around. God can change anything. If he's willing, if you're willing, God can absolutely, there's hope for this. There's restoration. And actually I had several people when they would pray for me, they would say, I just heard restoration. And actually one of those was Allie. Allie was
you?
our
Right.
daughter was telling me that. And I mean, how crazy is it that,
Well, it's my daughter-in-law and
step
my stepdaughter. That's what I meant, stepdaughter. I don't do the whole family like in-laws, uncles. I have no idea. You just in my family.
right. But let me so
Go ahead.
I'm breathing, and that's so hard. What I had to literally do was just focus on breathing. I wasn't thinking about anything else. I was literally going and counting 1, 2, 3, 4, hold it 4, and
Right.
then I would breathe it out for 4, and I just
Oh, yeah,
kept
I
doing
remember
it
that. Yeah.
over and over and over, and it got to the point as you get about 10 minutes in, your body starts to relax. At about 15, you're almost asleep, but I just kept doing it, and my hands felt like they weighed 150 pounds. I was just melting into the chair. It was crazy. And so the timer went off, and I wasn't necessarily trying to hear God. I was just breathing. But I got up and went into the house, and then I said, Lord, speak to me.
Right.
And that's when he did. He spoke to me, and he gave me a really powerful word. He told me, I kept hearing the word ditches, and I'm like, that's such a strange word to hear. And I told you, and I called you on the phone, told you, and you were just kind of like out of it. You're like, I mean, when you called me, I told you what I had heard. And
Yeah.
you're like, okay, that's great. But so I'm like, what does ditches mean? So I, of course, Google like scriptures with ditches in it. And it took me to 2 Kings 3:16, where it's talking about they're going into battle. Israel and Judah are going into battle against these other like Moabites and some other people, but they find themselves in a place where they have no water.
Right.
They're in this valley, and they have no water. So it says that their army had no water. There was no water for the cows that were with them. I guess the cattle they were running.
Right.
I guess they were gonna eat them. I don't know why they were
Yeah,
doing.
that's what the heck. Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
they
so
carried their grocery store with them on during wartime around
yeah.
that time. Yeah.
So I mean, like obviously they can't fight a battle without water, and they're gonna die if they don't get it. And so they call the prophet. They call Elisha, and Elisha says, basically, after he complains a little bit, he says, dig the ditches. God says, dig the ditches. He said,
Right.
there will be no wind, there will be no rain, but these ditches will be full of water. And it happened. And I was like, whoa, Lord. I mean, it was so powerful the way he said it to me. And I'm thinking, okay. And it says in that scripture, after he says what God's going to do, then he says, and this is a small thing for the Lord to do this. This is nothing. And it's like he was telling me, this is a small thing for me to fix your marriage. This is a small. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm over here thinking this is the biggest catastrophic event of my life. How could it ever be fixed? And he's like, this is a small thing. I can fix it. And just prepare. And so I'm telling you about it. And we've been trying to, like meditate on that, figure out. And so we just felt like over the past few months, he's been telling us to prepare because he was going to bless us. He was
Right.
going to send his provision, his blessing, and he wanted us to prepare for that.
Okay. All right. So I come home.
Right. So you're jumping back to that.
I'm
Okay,
jumping
gotcha.
back to that. So I come home.
5 days.
Um,
You're gone five
I was
days.
gone 5 days. You had to drive north of Dallas to Sherman
I
to,
hate driving in the city. Yeah.
to pick me up. And tell me about what I know you had to wait for a minute before I got there. Tell me
Yeah, I
what
had
was
to wait.
going on in your heart and in your
I
mind.
was conflicted.
Yeah.
Part of me was my spirit was forgiving you. I had forgiven you. I still was hurt, but I was like, I don't know. It's like God's love was just working through me. You know what
Right.
I mean? But my
Okay.
flesh sometimes would be like, okay, hey, buddy, I'm gonna make you pay for that.
Okay. Okay. So we got home. We sat
Right.
there a day. We got home, and what was going through your head whenever I was because I know I remembered that time there, and I know your mom called you like 6 times a day just until I mean I know and I understand that.
See,
I'm
everybody
giving
was
you.
scared that you
I
were
love your mother,
gonna
and mother loves
hurt
you.
me
And
or
everybody was
something.
scared I was going
Yeah.
to do something stupid. Um, what was it like? Because I was pretty sure you thought I was never going to walk into this house again. That's what crossed my mind when I was up there. So what was your mentality like? What was your were you in fight or flight while I was home when I first came home? What was your emotion?
No, I was actually okay. Um, I mean, I really feel like the Lord came in really strongly that week for me, and I felt level and I felt mostly okay. It actually didn't get harder until later. It was
Yeah,
it was the after that, because when you go through something like that through the trauma, you actually hold yourself together okay. It's after when you fall apart. So I was okay. I wanted you here. I did not for one second think you were not coming back.
Oh,
I felt like you wanted to be here. I knew you
oh,
were ashamed
absolutely.
and you hated yourself. Um, but I felt like you still really loved me.
I did. Still do.
Even though it had happened and I didn't even know everything yet. I just knew parts of the
Right.
story. But I feel like like God was confirming to me that you did love me.
Yeah.
But it was when we went to church that Sunday and I saw the
The,
change.
yeah.
I saw your hand shot up at the end of that message and you were crying and you were saying the prayer, the sinner's prayer. And it's like the prodigal moment that everybody wants to see for somebody they love is that
Right.
person. I get to see that with you, like you actually coming back to God
Yeah.
and meaning it. Because you can't, I mean, you can't fake that.
No, you can't fake. That was a really good moment in my life because I don't guess I had ever really fully surrendered to the Lord.
Yeah.
Being in the military and I was in for so long, and I was so used to supposedly taking care of myself and to my fire team and my squad that I didn't really think about God.
You're independent.
I was very well. You have to be independent to
Mhm.
get through things. So the first moment that I felt the Lord was I was on fire, but at first I was feeling so guilty and so unworthy of it that I fought it. I fought it most of that service. I was like, I have messed up way too bad. I can't live that. I don't deserve it.
Yeah, you didn't forgive yourself,
Right.
and you. I think every time you looked at me, you felt bad.
I felt terrible because I knew what I had done to you, and all you ever asked me to do was just love you, you know. But other than the occasional energy drink or you know dessert or something. But we just. I look back on it now and I see that I almost ruined something that was so nice, something that was so pretty. And if it hadn't been for God and your grace and God's grace, I guess I need to say it that way.
Mm.
If it hadn't been for God's grace and yours, I really don't think I would be here today. Uh, I think that anytime you have a soldier that doesn't have anything to look forward to, those thoughts creep back in. And one of the things that you were reassuring of whenever I was gone is that you were like, "We're going to talk about it when you get home." You kept saying, "When you talk about it when you get home." It never crossed my mind that I wasn't.
Mm.
You know,
You
it.
did keep asking me, "Are we gonna get a divorce? Are you gonna divorce me? Are you
Yeah,
gonna divorce me? I just need to know." And I would be like,
I don't know.
"Did I say that?"
Yeah,
Because
you said I don't
I
know,
think maybe
and
at
that's
first I
fine.
did, but then I think I said, "No, I'm not."
Yeah,
'Cause I couldn't lie to you, you
right. I
know?
broke down when you said that because I'm like, "How can this person forgive me after I've done all these things?" But okay, so we are almost a year into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost a year. September the 20th will be a year. Tell me what it has been like for you. Okay, so, and don't sugarcoat this now because I know that you're dealing
Mm.
with mistrust, anxiety, some other things that I'm sure you'll come to mind with. But tell me what everything's known, counseling's going well. Tell me what's going on in your head throughout that summer or throughout the winter and the spring while I'm at home
Well,
and while we were rolling down the highway with.
yeah, and I think one of the things people need to know is that you cannot go through something like that by yourself. You cannot think that you're fine and that you don't need to
Right.
talk about it with somebody or that you don't need support. That's almost arrogance. And I think I probably had a little bit of a pride about it. I wasn't trying to, but I really thought I was okay. But as the week went on, I got more angry and I
Okay.
got more sad. And then I got angry and then I got sad. And then I was okay. And then I was numb and then I was angry and then I was sad. I mean, it was the cycle of grief
Right.
because grief happens after the event. okay.
Well, you were. I know there's a 5 stages of grief when it comes to death, but I think something died with our marriage. The innocence definitely died, and then something was reborn
Yeah,
later down the road.
the fairy tale died. The which was honestly it probably needed to die because fairy tales aren't real. And it's not that I'm saying you can't have true love and you can't have a beautiful marriage, but the ideas that you have in your head of what your
Right.
marriage is, they're probably not true or
They're
real.
not realistic.
They're not realistic.
Right.
And that doesn't mean you can't have some of that and you can't have a beautiful marriage because I think we do now.
I do. I think
Um,
we really.
but I had to work through all those cycles. And with grief, it's not like a streamlined process where you go, okay, I'm angry for a while, and then you go through sadness, and then you go through denial, and then you bargain. I wish it was that easy, but it's not. It's just a big hodgepodge of crap, and you just kind of vacillate between them all. And so I never knew, and that this, there were weeks where I was angry with you for weeks,
Yeah.
and I was crazy acting.
Yeah.
Um,
You.
and there were times when I would just cry my eyes out. I
Right.
would just be so devastated, and I couldn't believe it happened or that you
Right.
did it. And I would say things like, "How could you do this to me? How could you do this to me?" And the truth is, yes, it was done to me in some way. I was a victim,
Of
but
course you.
it wasn't about me. We were talking about this the other day. It
Right.
wasn't about me. It never had anything to do with me. And that's
No.
so hard to believe when that happens to you.
Well, your heart hurt,
Yeah.
and when things fall apart like they do, and you saw the things you did, you heard me say the things that I did, do the things that I did, you can't help but be devastated. Can't help
Well,
but be hurt. The hurt's
it's
real.
not just that. It's the I think one of the things I've struggled with the most is the flashbacks of
Right.
seeing text messages or things that people said to or phone calls, and then I'm triggered by it, which is a whole other episode. But I'm I'm back in mistrust, and I'm thinking, do I really know everything?
Right.
If I'm being really honest, that's something I struggle with all the time, and that is just what do I really know everything, or do I just know what you want me to know? And finally, there comes a point. Our counselors talked about this with me.
Several.
Yeah, where there comes a point where you will drive yourself insane, trying like a detective, trying to figure out like what happened.
Right.
And finally, though, when the Lord tells me something, I listen. He's the only one I trust. I'm sorry. Um, I mean, we are rebuilding our trust, but as far
Yes.
as in this moment in my life, he was the only one that I trusted to tell me the absolute truth. And he just told me, you know what you needed to know, what I needed you to know, that's what you know. You don't need to know anything. And when he told me that,
Right.
then it became easier for me to let this go and not keep trying to find out more information and what about this time? Because what happens is you start guessing, second guessing absolutely everything
Right.
you've ever every little detail that we were involved in together. I start, well, what about this one time? What about
Okay, so
this?
let me ask you, when you're in bed and you wake up and you have these thoughts, do you think that's the demonic realm? Do you think that's just a little bitty thing in your
I
ear
think it
saying,
could be
"Hey,
both. Yeah, I mean, because that's a struggle. Because if any of you are walking through betrayal, or being traumatized by anything,
mm,
one of the responses is, during the day I'm able to control it more, but at night you're not.
right,
Right, because you're asleep and that part of your brain is just like it's like zoned out. So the subconscious part of your brain that thinks that you might be in danger,
right,
the
right,
reptilian part is like, hey, have you thought about this? Because I think you might still be in danger. You might need to look at this situation. So that's what I struggle with now, and it's not all the
right,
time, but I do several times a month. I wake up going, and it'll
yeah,
usually be consecutive days, like 5 or 6 days of me just being kind of tormented. I do think sometimes I think it's physiological, but sometimes I think it is the enemy just trying to figure out a way to play games with me, mind games.
right,
You know.
right. Because I think that if we weren't doing things the right way, you wouldn't be having. Uh, sorry about that. We have a dog that is terrified of thunder, and
Oh,
it
it's
is
thundering.
yeah, it's
Okay.
thundering outside, and our dog went outside for a minute, and she's nowhere to be found. So sorry for the glitch there, but I think that and I just completely lost my train of thought. Sorry, I do that quite a bit too,
Well, I
guys.
think that it could be it's both. So I found that
Oh, the
the enemy
demonic
likes
realm,
to play games with me during the
right?
day a lot too, to get me caught up in my flesh. If I don't constantly surrender myself before the Lord,
Right,
because here's the thing. I told the Lord I would partner with him or you for us to stay together
right,
because he loves you and I love you and he left, he's going to give you a choice. He gave me the choice. I had an out. I could have taken it,
right.
but I loved you. I love you. And I just felt like he was saying, if you will partner with me,
Yeah,
this is going to turn out good. And so
right,
I couldn't go back on that and go, oh, I've changed my mind now. So I'm just going to believe everything the enemy, because he's just, now that he knows that we're
right.
going to do this, he's terrified because what we're doing right now, he doesn't want us to help anybody.
Okay, so we've got where your emotions and everything are kind of leveling off.
Somewhat
Okay,
regulated.
so tell me the things that you would ask, or tell the group, or tell the listeners what you have asked me to do to make you feel better when I'm away from home, like
Ah,
the
yeah.
app
Well, we were already using an app so we could track each
Life
other.
360,
And you told
wonderful
me
app.
that that's one of the things that kept you from going
It kept me honest. To a
too
certain extent,
far
it absolutely kept me
because
from
you
going
would have
too
got
far.
caught.
I would
Yeah.
have got
I would have been like, what are you doing there? So,
right,
because I'm always like, where are you?
right.
I'm always checking.
God forbid I go the wrong way somewhere. You calling me. What are you doing? Well, I miss my
I
family.
have learned your tells as far as like, I know when you're anxious. I know what makes you anxious. I can feel it. I used to ignore it and think it was just
Right.
me before all this, but now I'm like, nope, I'm sensing it.
Yeah.
I sense it. I hear. I know something's going on with you, and I know what causes it, and I know when to get you out of an environment that you like. Even the other day at church, we had to leave because it was just
Oh
too much
God,
for both of us.
it was
But
a lot.
I think for you, you had reached that limit. It was too loud. There was too much moving around. The people were moving around too much, and
Yeah.
it was out of control.
Yeah, guys like me don't really like a whole lot of loud noises.
Hmm.
And if we have to sit anywhere prolonged amount of time. Now I love going to church. I like the church we're going to. We get to hear Allie sing every
Hmm.
weekend. She has a beautiful voice, kind of sounds like Adele. Um, our son-in-law Dre, um, sings. He's the lead worship minister there at the church, and I love to hear them sing. But something about last weekend,
It
I
was
don't.
very loud,
It
and
was very
it
loud,
was
and
there was a lot of like a baby screaming and all this kind of stuff.
yeah,
And
it was sensory
yes,
overload.
for me too.
Yeah, and I think that anyone who has any type of anxiety disorder, as far as depression or PTSD for that
Hmm.
matter, anytime you start getting too many things hitting you in too many different directions, you're going to have this meltdown if you
Hmm.
don't have a calm, reassuring voice
Hmm.
that doesn't argue with you. So, spouses, if
Yeah.
a fitting party is at church with you and they say, I've got to leave, don't argue with them,
Hmm.
because church is always going to be there.
Hmm.
You know, if they tell you that, what, I'm just feeling very anxious right now, the first thing that comes to my mind is like, why are you anxious in God's house? You know, but it's nothing to do with God.
Right.
It's nothing to do with the Lord. It's nothing to do with the relationship with the Lord. There's just something that is triggering going on.
Hmm.
And the
Something that
worst thing,
reminds you of being in combat.
right, even with you, if you're going through the emotions of like some mornings you wake up and I ask you, how are you doing? You're like, I'm not good today.
Yeah.
That's because you had that stuff going on during the night. And even with the spouse who was the hurt party, if they tell you they're overloaded, get them out. Take them somewhere where there's no
Well,
stimulation.
because there's something out there, PTSD. If you have a situation where you've been betrayed, like this situation,
Yeah,
there's something called um, POSD. What is it? It's I can't remember, but it's basically if you've been betrayed because of infidelity.
Right. I
It,
didn't know that.
it's not like in the DSM-5, but it's basically, I'm reading a book about it. I can't even remember the name of
Okay.
it,
I didn't
but
even know about that.
it causes a type of PTSD. It may not be like it can be PTSD if you don't deal with it like I've been dealing with it.
Right.
Like if you just try to suppress it and you didn't get help and you didn't get counseling and you didn't talk about it, you just act like, it's fine, whatever, or you just get out of the relationship and you don't ever heal
Right.
because then you're just going to drag it into the next one. Um, it can lead to PTSD for
Right.
people. So
Absolutely.
I didn't want to be in that statistic, even though you and I've talked and we think that I have it from other stuff.
Well, there's a lot going on in your life before you even knew me that
Right? It's
obviously,
not funny.
and,
It's
and
really not.
PTSD isn't just for veterans.
Right.
It's not just for people who are in the military. It's for anyone who has been through any type of a traumatic situation like the
Well, there's
infidelity.
different levels of PTSD. They diagnose you with complex PTSD,
Yeah.
which is repeated exposure to trauma over lots of years.
Lifetime. Even
So that's a way worse situation because now your brain is adapted to levels of adrenaline. Now
right,
mine's not. I'm not that way. So
right,
I don't have that. Mine's just more of like being traumatized by something and never being the same.
right. That involves, guys like me, it involves risky behavior,
Right.
extreme sports. Um, I've never
Driving
been really
fast,
guilty of driving fast. I've never been guilty of
gambling,
that. I drive like an old
pornography.
man, but pornography, gambling, which I don't do any of those. I think
Yeah,
pornography
I
is
even told you a
disgusting.
couple times. I was like, I mean, when I was crying, I was so upset. I was like, why couldn't you have picked a different
Right.
drug?
Yeah.
Like, why did you have to pick this one? This is the one that hurt me.
Yeah.
It was
Well,
selfish to say that,
there
but
was a lot of porn in the Middle East whenever we would get
hmm
deployed. We would get, all guys always had videos and stuff, even though it was illegal over there. But I never, I think me having a daughter, I think having a daughter really, really hit me in the heart
right.
about it. Even when I was before Brianna was born, I didn't like it. But after Brianna was born, I'm thinking, that's somebody's daughter that is being
hmm
abused right there. We're
right.
sitting there getting joy out of it. I said, this is, but I mean, no matter how you put it, cheating, getting adrenaline fix through infidelity of any shape or fashion is wrong. And there's no excuse. Communication is always the best thing. If I had just communicated with you
Yeah, but you
and
didn't
told,
feel safe enough
well, I didn't
because
feel safe.
how do you
Right.
tell someone, hey, I'm a sex
Yeah.
addict and I've been texting other women? Like,
Right.
I would have lost my mind. I don't know that there would have been a good way to tell me.
I don't think so because you and I come from very, very different lives. They're very, very different types of paths as far as family now. You've had some problems with one of your family members, but you guys have worked that out now and you guys are very close. But my family in life has never really got. The one thing that I could have done any differently was come to you and not be afraid
Well, before it ever happened,
before it
and
ever happened.
there
So
were
there's
there were
some feelings in me
moments.
that I need to get out
Yeah,
right now, and I don't know how to do that
right.
without your.
Well, you did say it, but you didn't say it in a way that made sense to me. You kept telling me, I need to go do man stuff. And I said, okay, go do man
Yeah,
stuff. I
I
need to go
did.
hunt or fish. Okay, go.
Where am I going to go?
And I said, well, we'll go to
Yeah,
Mina. And then always would be like, we couldn't go because we have a cabin in Mina, Arkansas. And we
right,
were like, something, because we always had to work. It's like we could never go.
right.
And now I look back and this is a whole other podcast episode that we need to do that talks about like putting the first things first, like realizing that everything's not about money and making a living, like being bold enough and brave enough and confident enough to trust God financially
Right.
and putting your marriage before all that crap because we were putting money and the need for it and trying to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
Something God's been teaching us the last year is, hey, trust me.
Okay. So I think we're kind of winding things down now. So what do you think as far as okay? You're speaking to women who have been the victim of this. You're
Could be
married to
men,
and men. You're married to a veteran,
or you're married to a cop,
or you're married to a
or you're
cop,
married
or a
to a
doctor,
fireman,
or
or
a
you're married.
nurse, or a fireman, someone
Yeah,
who
yeah,
has
yeah.
seen some traumatic things in their
Right,
life.
right.
How do you do it? How do you get married to them? How do you stay married to them? I mean, what is? I think you figured it out pretty well, but I think that only through the well, I'll let you tell that. But I think that well, how do you
I
do it?
think it requires, first of all, a lot of empathy. You have to be able to see the world through their eyes, but I couldn't do that without God. Like he's given me that. Like and there's people I know that are like, I do not have any mercy whatsoever. It's like not one of my gifts. Well, I'm just the opposite. I'm way too merciful. But I believe that's the heart of God. I believe
Right,
mercy is the heart of God. Grace,
right,
mercy. And when I think about, okay, Jesus forgave all of us for all of our sins. Those of us that have come to the cross and said, admitted it, please forgive me.
right.
He doesn't hold it over our head. He doesn't, like, you know, for the rest of our lives badger us with it. Remember that time you did this to me? And one of the things that kept me in this with you was, how many times have I symbolically cheated on the Lord?
Oh, we do it every day.
Right.
We do it every day
And
through
does
sin
does
and
he does he take me back? Does he, or
always.
us? Yeah. Does he forgive you? Does he constantly talk about it, or does he just he forgives you? Does he expect you to change? Of course, with his help,
Well, I
enabled by
think that
grace.
around that time, God wants you to lean in further on Him.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You
and then
gotta
I
die to
think that
yourself.
right, and I think
Um,
that couples that are going through the things that we've been going through, I think that's one of the secrets is you've got to lean in on each other. Don't listen to outside noise.
right,
Don't
true.
listen. Don't listen to things you hear on the TV. YouTube can be a good resource for
Can
some
be
things,
terrible
but
though.
it can be terrible.
I've seen some of the comments because I've watched a lot of videos like this, and I have seen people get on there and say, you know what, I'd have dumped that loser. He's a freaking piece of crap. Don't
Right,
stay with him. They cheat on you, there'll always be a cheater. I mean, just, and a lot of that seems true when you've been hurt, but I'm
right,
telling you, there's a story underneath their pain. And
right,
if you can get past for one moment, get yourself out of the way and see what happened to that person that made them
right.
do that, because they probably didn't want to. Very few
No.
people, I think, want or intentionally set out to cheat on their spouse.
Well, and if someone out there does intentionally cheat, or if they're serial cheaters and they're
Right.
unrepentant of it, that's a whole different
That's a whole
story.
different thing. I'm not talking
We're
about
talking
that.
about our story and how it can relate to other people as far as having infidelity and going through the motions that we have done. But if you're with a serial cheater who is unrepentant, then that's a whole different.
Yeah, you got to hear from God for
Yeah.
your situation. I don't think that it's the same in every situation. I think God knows the other person's heart.
Right.
But it's going to be a risk either way. Like, I
It
think
is.
we none of us want to get hurt, so we try to figure out a way where it's not risky. But love is always a risk, and that's something he told me, because I begged him to just tell me, like, how is this going to end? Are we going to
Yeah.
be okay? And I just felt like he said, love is always a risk.
Love is
Even
always a
it's a
risk.
risk with us when he loves us.
Right.
It's a risk for him. And I think that when I begin to look at our marriage through his eyes, and
Right.
kind of hold up my relationship with God and hold up my relationship in my marriage with you, and realize there were similarities. And that's how the marriage altar came about, because we
Right.
we really figured out that, okay, if we're gonna make this work, it's a three-string cord that's not easily broken,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, it's like a harmony, and harmony, and because I'm a musician too, harmony is three notes. It's
Right.
not two. You can't have harmony with just two notes. Actually, true harmony is three notes.
Right.
And so it's interesting to me because it's a trinity as well. Like, you have the Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy
Yeah.
Spirit. Our marriage is us and Him.
Absolutely.
And when He's in the middle, when He's involved with it, it has hope, and it can
Absolutely.
survive, and it can thrive, and it can become beautiful. But without Him, I don't
Yeah.
think it can happen.
Okay. So we kind of touched on that just now. So, okay. So tell women and spouses and the victims of cheating and
Mm.
infidelity, what is the best way for them to forgive? As far as what's forgetting is going to be impossible. It's always going to be. And I think the best thing that it's not forgotten. but as far as forgiving and putting it past you and moving forward. Tell me what your tools were. I mean, I'm pretty sure, I know the Lord was a lot of it,
Yeah.
but there had to be some things that you tried, things that you did and read that helped you get through um, that.
Anytime I have to forgive someone, one of the pictures I always have in front of me is Jesus on the cross, and he's telling them as they are spitting, pulling his beard, whipping him, whatever, Father, forgive them
Yeah.
because they don't know what they're doing. And I'm thinking if the Son of God can forgive people for the horrendous things they did to them, how could I not? Like, how do I have the right to not forgive someone if
Right.
he forgives? That's the way I see forgiveness. Does that mean it's easy? Does that mean I always want to? No.
Right.
But it's been because I've been able to put myself in your shoes. And I would say if you are married to someone who has PTSD, you really, really need to understand PTSD. You need to research it. You need to talk to counselors. You need to get therapy and maybe even be in a support group for
Right.
people, spouses that are married to veterans with PTSD.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't understand what's going on in their brain, and I just so happened, and I think this is a God thing, I've been trained in some counseling. I've been trained and done a lot of like some psychology classes, so I had a little bit of it. I had enough to know that it's real. Okay, because a lot of people that don't understand, they're ignorant of PTSD or any other mental disorder for that matter, and they just think people are making it up. They just
Right.
think it's like, oh my gosh, just get over it. Well, until you've been in that person's shoes and you've been in a war zone with bullets flying by your head, or your best friend just got killed right in front of you, I don't think you have anything to say that you don't understand.
Right.
And so I've always tried to put myself in a situation where, okay, let me look at this through your eyes. What made you like this?
Right.
Because if I can understand what did it, then I can have compassion. Remember the
Absolutely.
day in March, a few more things came out a few months ago, and
Yeah.
you came home and you were torn. I'm not going to go into what happened,
Right.
but I said to you, you said, sit down, I need to talk to you. And you start telling me, and this is the first time I think you had ever been, I mean, honest with me. Like, this has been the struggle of my life. I've never told anybody this. So, anyway, I don't know what I was saying exactly, but I was saying something about looking at it through your eyes.
Yes.
And that day, you said, I need you to sit down and I have to tell you this. And
Mhm.
you were so honest with me. And I said, I wanted to get in my flesh and I wanted to start like throwing darts and hurling and being like, you hurt me so bad. But I said to you, okay, I'm going to put my counselor hat on. I'm going to
Right.
listen. Do you remember me saying that?
I do.
I said, I'm going to be a counselor. I'm going to put myself to the side right now and I'm just going to
Right.
listen to you because you're hurting. And I think that's what you have to do. You have to somehow like get outside of yourself for a minute.
Right. Well, men, I think that whenever you finally reach a point, you have to put the macho aside. You
Mm,
have to put your pride aside. And I know there are some guys, I'm never gonna let my pride go. But you know
right.
what? Pride goes before the fall. And I didn't want to fall anymore because I was at rock bottom after that. There, I just didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Um, you got to let go of your pride, and you've got to have really hard conversations that are going to make you look bad. Um, but then you've also got to depend on the Lord and see what God's going to do with it. Luckily, I'm blessed enough to where He put it in your heart to forgive. You know,
Yeah. Well, and I think that I knew that you were being so honest,
yeah, I
and
was.
it was things that were really hard for me to hear,
Well, I mean,
you know?
I'll go ahead and tell them what it was. Is the one thing that I had never told you was about my addiction,
Right.
and and my sexual addiction started when I was 13, 14 years old, and I remember the first time. And from there, it was like I was a totally different man.
Yeah.
And going through high school, the military, being out, the being deployed and then getting out of the military.
Like 40 years of this
Yeah,
addiction
it was
that no one
40.
knew about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly 40 years of this addiction that no one knew and no one cared. I mean, I didn't have that in my family where I could go and just talk to them and say, "Hey, man, this is what I'm doing." My dad would be like, "All right, cool."
Right.
Dad was a truck driver. He didn't care. And then my mom would have beat me with the Bible. You know, so
Right.
I just I just kind of kept it to myself,
But it was
and
the only thing that made you feel
it
better.
was the only thing that made me feel good.
So,
And then how
and
am I
that's
going to tell you that?
right.
I mean, I just met this nice, beautiful woman. We got married really quick, and I left out a lot of things. And how am I going to come up to you and tell you, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm a sex addict. Will you marry me?" You know, that ain't going to happen. You know, so
Probably not.
God exposes all things in His own timing, and I think that that was a total God thing. Um, the way it came out, why it came out, and all of that. Because now I don't feel dirty. I don't feel ashamed anymore.
Yeah.
I
There's a lot of
feel
self-hatred
I am
for
so I'm
sure.
not clean, but my garments are being washed.
You are. You are clean.
But I think that with time and with patience on both of our parts, we're gonna get through this. And I'm just gonna tell the offending party, man or female, um, put up don't just put up with the insecurity. Talk through the insecurity. If they want to put a tracking app on your phone, if you've got nothing to hide, by gosh, put a tracking app on your phone.
Mm.
If they call you and say, "Hey, where are you going?" and you're like, "I told you I was going to the store," they're like, "Well, you never go that way." Give them some grace, because if they're used to you going a certain way, one way or the other, and you go a different route, like I did that day, yeah, that's going to cause some issues because it's going to be a trigger for you, and you're not going to do well with it. So you've got to give them grace when it comes to questioning you about things, because you have to remember that even though you were the one who did the hurting and you've been able to push through it, sometimes things are going to come up to make that person re-remember those emotions, and you have got to give them grace. Well, first thing is you did it. The first
Right.
thing is that you did it, and the second thing is that they gave you grace and they're still with you. And you also have to remember that God forgave.
Yeah.
So you have to be patient with them as much as they have had to be patient with you.
Yeah, and I was gonna say one last thing. I think that really I wish I'd have known this
Yeah.
sooner, but I would just say look for God's reassurances, look
Right.
for His hand in it, because what you're going to be drawn to is all the negative. You're going
Yeah.
to be drawn to, oh, oh, here's another secret. Oh, here's another lie. Oh, I can't trust you. Oh, like you're always drawn to the negatives in the situation.
Right.
But if you will look, God is probably working on some things too, and they're positive. So, like for us, every time I would start questioning whether or not, because I've questioned whether or not at moments did I make the right decision.
Right.
We've had fights or
That's
whatever,
fair.
and
Yeah.
I would be like, oh my God, am I being lied to? Am I just being taken for granted or advantage of again. And then I would remember God gave me signs all along the way. And He was revealing, yes, this is my plan. Trust me,
Yeah.
trust me. And I would be honest with you, I couldn't trust you, but I could trust Him.
But do you still trust me?
I'm building, that's
Right.
being built back.
And that's why I told everyone to give you some grace about it, is because do the tracking app, answer the questions.
Hmm.
I
You
still
have
have
to
a hard
rebuild
time
the
with that.
trust, okay?
Right.
So you don't know if you can trust the person again unless you give them a leash to do something. You know what I mean?
Right. That's what our counselor said.
Right. And
Yeah.
so I think I've been doing better with that.
You've been doing a lot better. But I guess before we close, I'll just tell you guys, if you're in our situation, one of the biggest things you can do besides prayer and having a deep relationship with the Lord is get counseling.
Like,
We got lucky and we have a wonderful counselor. She has been fantastic. I also get counseling through the VA, but we're not going to touch on that right now because
lots and lots and lots of counseling.
lots and lots and
I
lots.
think that, and also something we're working on is our as a coaching certification. Our
Yes.
objective and goal is to
More
start
things are
helping
coming.
people because we feel God's calling us to do this. But if you want to be in contact with us, of course, you can comment here
Yes.
or wherever, but you can also email us at Shana, which is SHANA at shanastrange.net. And yes, it is Strange, not Williams, because that was my other name before we
Yeah.
got married.
It matters.
That's
We're
my
both really
music
quirky.
stage name too. So shanastrange.net. So Shana at
Yeah.
shanastrange.net. Email me there. Email us there. And if you're wanting to talk to us, and
And you
we're
can
happy
also
to.
hear her music on any
Any platform under
music
Shana Strange.
platforms. Shana Strange.
Yep.
One of my favorite songs with her is "Like a Prodigal."
Yeah, that was your song.
It's my song. I love it. Um, but anyway, everybody, you got anything else, love?
No, I think we're good. Why don't we just pray real quick and then
Okay.
we'll-
Go
All
ahead,
right, Lord, we come before you. We thank you for your grace, your mercy, your plans are always good. Lord, I just thank you that whoever is hearing this are the people that need to hear this, and I pray that you work forgiveness in hearts, that there's where forgiveness needs to be worked, that you work your plan for the good, that where the enemy would like to bring destruction, God, that you have a plan and it is good, and that you would bring forth that good plan. And for anybody that's hurting, Father, I pray that you just hold them up, God. Just hold them in your arms, give them peace, give them comfort, direct them to someone that can help them, counselors, therapists, friends. Father, I pray that you just whisper and sing over them, sing about your love over them, and that you have a good plan and that you're going to work it out. We just have to trust you. So I just pray, that you work all things for good. And I guess in Jesus' name.
Amen and amen. And we're going to try to put out one of these a week.
Every week.
Every week we're going to try to put out one a week. But my business has been really busy. Your business has been pretty busy. So once a week. The upload time takes, 2 hours?
Well, this is audio, so it won't take that long.
Yeah. So anyway, I hope everyone has a blessed week.
We'll see you, I guess, next week.
Have a good night.
Yep.